Hello, MicroConf. How we all doing? Good? So Las Vegas, baby, yeah. Kind of a weirdly appropriate place to get up and give a talk about risk and probability and emotion. So, my name's James Tayler, and over the last 2 years, I've taken a couple of risks. So, I made a $100,000 after-tax profit betting 20K on Bitcoin. I've turned down the opportunity to buy a sushi business, thus avoiding a $250,000 lawsuit. And I've recently quit my job to go indie hacking full-time for 1 year. So during that time, I've developed a framework for dealing with risk that I want to share with you guys today. So the first thing we're going to do is get into the emotional foundation of it, and then we're going to go cover the logical foundation of it. So the first thing you notice about taking a risk is that it feels horrible. Our bodies produce a very strong physiological response to this. And this is because our brains grew up in a time that we no longer live in. So your fear of failure is actually your fear of getting eaten by a lion. We risk resources and reputation for a reward. And because we grew up living in limited-sized social dominance hierarchies of about 150 people, weirdly, you actually feel really famous. And like if you screw up, everyone in the tribe, which is everyone ever, is going to know about it. And you'll never get another girlfriend again because they're all going to know how much you suck. So allow me to share with you my most painful story, and in the hopes that that kind of sets you free, because whatever fail you have, it'll never be as epic as this. When I was 20 years old, 10 years ago, I had a friend, and he had an idea. I had no job, no education, and frankly, no hope. But I had a little bit of money, and so my friend convinced me to become an investor. Investors make money. I thought my problems were solved. Hooray. So I became a founder in this venture where my only contribution was money. My co-founder's contribution was the idea, and our other co-founder's contribution was literally not showing up to meetings because it was better when he wasn't there. And so I spent about $30,000 outsourcing the development on, which was a third of my net worth at the time, on ratemyspoon.com, which was the world's one and only social photo sharing service dedicated to taking pictures with random strangers in random places whilst spooning. Yes, the idea was that freaking dumb. And what did people think of me? Because I failed, of course, but, they didn't think anything. They didn't even bat an eyelid. I didn't die. So if, in fact, my life is 10x better than it was at the time, my prospects are better than ever, and I got the girl. So take it from me. If you want to come out of a risk emotionally unscathed, it's wise to do the following 3 things. Number 1, assume 100% of the downside risk will go to 0, and only make bets that you're comfortable, or at least you can still feel like you can walk away from. Number 2, reason through the first, second, and third order consequences on a 20 to 30 year macro of what you're about to do to get the wider context. And number 3, understand that your ancient psychology is messing with you. You're not actually going to die, and in reality, nothing's really that scary. So let's move on to the logical foundation of risk. When I started my software career a couple years back, the best advice I got online was 2 words: learn business. So I did. I went out and I got the reality TV MBA. I watched Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, The Profit, you name it, all of it. And actually it saved me a lot of money. So a couple years ago, my wife and I were evaluating buying a sushi business. So we went with many brokers and we evaluated many businesses. And turns out the nightmares from CNBC's The Profit are not reality TV. They really reflect reality. None of these businesses knew the numbers, and importantly, none of them could show us the books, so we had no way to evaluate objectively what we would be buying. And every time I would ask a broker, what is food cost for this business? They would say, well, industry average is about 35%. And I would say, no, what is food cost for this business? And they could never answer. So we didn't buy a sushi business. And I was telling this story to a friend of mine recently, and he said, I know a guy that did, and he's currently suing the guy for about 250 grand because the business performed nothing like what the broker said. So hands up, how many people agree with this statement? 50% of businesses will fail within the first 5 years. Who's ever heard that? Right? But how many of you agree that the figures are the exact same for a serial entrepreneur with successful exits on their fourth or fifth business? They're probably not, right? They probably have better odds. Why? Well, let's get into it. So risk has two dimensions we need to think about, upside and downside. If you work a 9-to-5 job, the downside risk that is nothing. You're not losing anything from doing that, but your upside is capped at the salary and benefits you and the employer agree on. Conversely, if you go out on a business venture, it's the opposite. Your downside risk is capped at the capital you put in and the opportunity costs of the money you could earn by doing other things, but your upside is not. It's all the money you could possibly make on that venture, which might be significantly more. But how do we know this is going to work? We don't, right? There's a little bit of uncertainty there. So what can we do to address this uncertainty? Well, in information theory, information can be defined as a reduction in uncertainty. Also in information theory, there's this concept of mutual information. So the mutual information of X and Y is the reduction in uncertainty of Y given that you know X. And this is stunningly important because in business, there are many unknown unknowns, things we cannot directly know or study. However, we can still reduce the risk of these unknown unknowns through the mutual information we can gain by directly studying related things, like all of these topics that relate to business. And so, moving on to probability theory, Bayes' theorem is basically a tool that allows us to guesstimate probabilities based on very little data. And how it works is you take an initial guess. And if you don't know, call it 50-50. And then as new information comes in, you revise the probability based on where it's currently at, either upwards or downwards, and how far depends on how you weight that information. So as we're getting all this information, we don't necessarily have to do the math, but intuitively, this is working in the background to help us revise these probabilities and kind of course correct for what we're doing. But it becomes an extremely powerful framework for thinking about risk when we couple it with expected value theory. So to do an expected value calculation, you take the total upside you stand to gain and times it by the probability, minus out what it would cost to pursue that venture, and you have to pay that cost regardless of whether you succeed or not, right? That's your expected value. So extremely simple case, $1 million upside, 25% chance it works out. Let's say it costs you nothing. That would be $250,000 positive expected value. Brilliant. However, in a more realistic case, it kind of gets a bit complicated. It's sort of counterintuitive. So if it's $1 million upside with a 25% chance, but it costs you $100,000 regardless of whether you succeed or fail, then in actuality, it's 75% of the time you're going to walk away minus $100,000. So it doesn't feel like the right thing to do. However, the math says that long term, if you keep taking this bet over and over again, you'll come out $150,000 ahead. Mathematically speaking, it's the correct move. How this all hinges, though, on the accuracy of that probability. So herein lies the rub. What we can do is to reduce the unknown's risk is to use this as sort of a feedback loop. And that by going wide and deep on any and all topics related to business, we can reduce our uncertainty and intuitively deploy Bayes' theorem to revise our probabilities up and downwards to continue to get those estimates to be more and more accurate. And this has a material impact on our expected value calculations, which then in turn inform which course of action we should take to execute on our dreams. So to illustrate this point, let's say on your $1 million opportunity, you get a piece of information that comes in, you think, wait a minute, that's not 25%. I think this is more like 40% chance that this works out. Now, your expected value calculation winds up at $300,000 EV positive. Even better, we should definitely do this. But conversely, let's say some new information comes in and we think, actually, I only think this has about a 9% chance that this works out. Well, now you take $1 million, what's 9% of that? What's 90 grand, minus out the 100,000 that it would cost you to pursue this, and now you've got negative expected value from minus $10,000. Guys, you really should never, ever take that bet. So I have an insane level of confidence that every single one of us in this room with this strategy can win at our dreams. And I want to leave you with a thought experiment that inspired this level of confidence in me, and hopefully that has an impact on you. So what if every single week you read a new nonfiction book, or watch one of these talks, or come to a conference like MicroConf so get this information about these business, and you talked to customers and potential customers every day about their needs and their problems. You continue to always ship products, and you keep meeting credible and connected people. And what if you could do that for 300 years? What do you think that would do for your future and your chances? And that, my friends, is why there is no downside in going for it.